I kind of thank them every day. Guys like Lemieux and Gretzky, they made my career, really, chasing them around.
He's still the only BU hockey player to be a 3-time All-America. And he was there. He was part of that team that dominated the ECAC. The 4 years he was there, they were one of the best teams, one of the best college hockey teams in North America. And Rick was front and center.
I grew up in North Park Street, and 9 kids in the family, and I remember our house. The kitchen was about the size of a closet, and I don't know how my mom did it with 9 kids to feed them all. And my dad worked 44 years on the railroad, and he was always away. And I think he probably made more money playing pool than he did, working on the railroad. But yeah, we grew up in North Park Street, and it just seemed like every kid in the neighborhood had a rink in the wintertime. So John Mulvihill lived down the street. They had boards and lights, and then you got dressed in the basement. You walk out. It was pretty nice. But I remember my mom and dad out 3 in the morning, watering the rink and make sure it was nice for us the next day and stuff. And they'd have to fix all the pickets the next day, or that spring that we broke with hockey pucks. But then we played baseball, we played football, we played all kinds of stuff in the summertime.
When he was 3 years old, they put his brother's skates on him and put him out on the rink, and he knew how to skate when he was 3. The first time he was put out, it was just so natural for him. And he said they had to haul him off that rink on the back of North Park Street.
I'm number 2. My brother Terry's the oldest, and then there's 6 boys and 3 girls. And all the girls played sports too. I mean, my sister Jean Ann was a terrific athlete at Quinny, and Joan was really good, and Janet, I think she might have been the first girl to play hockey in Belleville. So yeah, and all the boys played, and all went on to college, 3 of us anyway, Terry, Tony, and myself, and all captains there, and all went to BU. And Terry was a good player, Tony was a good player, Kevin played, and so you learned a lot for sure. Terry was always leading the way. He went to play junior first, and then we followed. And I remember he went to junior A camp in Niagara Falls, and he could have made the team that year, and then he hurt his ankle or something, so he came home. So the following year, I went to junior camp in Niagara Falls with Terry. So I remember the coach telling me, he says, grow 6 inches and gain 40 pounds, we'll keep you. And I went back to Belleville and played junior, and then went on from there. But Terry was the leader, for sure. We followed his footsteps. When I was growing up, too, those McFarland guys, every one of them that lived in this area came down and volunteered their time. As a kid, boy, that was big. When you get, Floyd Crawford and Lionel Botley and these guys, Shaker Baker, Wiener Brown, and all these guys come down and donate their time to coach or whatever. Yeah, that was big. The McFarlands really made a lot of kids, I think, turn to hockey for sure. And then my dad, he played for the CNR Diesels back in the day, and I don't imagine a lot of people remember the CNR Diesels, but they had train tracks that run all the way down Pinnacle Street, right to the rink, and they jump on the train and go to Kingston or wherever to play.
I'd heard these stories too about Rick, how incredibly gifted he was as an all-around athlete. And Rick Locke had a good story. Rick was coaching him in football, and they had an important football game on a late Friday afternoon. And Rick threw 2 touchdown passes and ran for 4 more, and they won. And then he ran up the hill at Quinny Field, and Snipe Matthews, who was GM of the Bobcats, was waiting for him with the car running. And Rick, with his football equipment, and according to the story, jumps in the back seat, and Snipe drives into Peterborough. He changes in the back seat because it's going to be close. The Bobcat bus is long gone, and Rick had to play this football game. And as Rick Locke tells it, they get to Peterborough. Rick makes it for opening faceoff, scores 2 goals and picks up an assist, and the Bobcats win that game too. So there was Snipe at the top of the hill, waiting, and then looking at his watch, and the minute the football game's over, he's up the hill and gone to Peterborough and has a great game there too. That, to me, is Rick Meagher. A career in one day.
It was just fun. I mean, all the guys I played with were all pretty good players, and we got to travel, and you didn't think about anything other than playing the game. You're excited about going to the rink and putting your skates on and go out and playing. And the boards are really high there. and so you had to watch yourself when you jumped off the bench because you could break an ankle or something. But I remember no glass. You know, they had screen at the end on both ends of the rink, and I don't know how many people were in the rink. Probably just parents at the time when we played growing up. But then when I got to junior, you know, we sold that building out. There were lineups trying to get in the building when we come down to play the game. So I had a lot of fond memories of the memorial.
I remember I was in the early years of high school, and that would have been in the early 70s, and the city really embraced the Bobcats. Moving into that Metro Junior B League was the smartest thing that organization did, because you had really good competition. You had strong Toronto teams coming in, and a good rivalry with Kingston ended up developing with the Voyageurs. But it was great hockey and big crowds on Friday nights. I mean, the Bobcats, during that run in the 70s, they were the team in town. Senior A hockey was starting to come to an end in Belleville, but the Junior B team, the Bobcats, great name, and the team was mostly local. They just captured the whole hockey imagination of the town. He was a scorer. He could score too, and a great playmaker. He had a lot of good teammates too. That was a pretty good team. Grant Goeven went through that system, and Jimmy Richardson was really special, and they had a ton of good hockey players. It was a nice team, but Rick was head and shoulders. He could just do it all. He could kill penalties. He could rag the puck. He could shoot. He could score. He could set people up. There weren't too many facets of the game that he didn't excel at. Rick was Rookie of the Year in the Metro League his first year, and you could just tell, special athlete. He was, I would say, probably one of the best all-around athletes ever produced in this area. Played everything at Quinney Secondary School. He was the quarterback. He was a heck of a baseball player in the summertime. Played center for the Cats, and I remember going to so many games Friday night, home games for the Bobcats. Didn't miss many through high school. And I don't remember a night when there was anybody better on the ice than Rick Meagher.
When I played junior B in Belleville, they didn't have no glass on the boards. So a lot of my buddies would come and they have greb boots on, and they'd be with their feet up, and if you come too close to your opposing team, you might get a greb boot in the side of the face or something. But people look at it now and might frown on it a little bit, but guys would bring eggs and all kinds of stuff. It was nuts. My brother Terry went a year before I did. And then I was playing junior B here in Belleville, and I got offers to play some semi-pro in southern United States somewhere. And I'm glad I didn't go, because I probably wouldn't have any teeth now if I went and played in that league. But yeah, the next year I went to BU, but it was not until late August that I got accepted at BU. So I was talking every day with Clarkson. Jerry York was the coach there. And he would come to my house and he would show me videos and see what courses I could take and all that stuff. And so BU accepted me late in August, and then had to write Jerry York a letter to tell him I was going to BU. But I went to BU and followed Terry there, and they had a pretty good year when Terry was there. So then we came in the next year, and they fired the coach Leon Abbott, and Jack Parker took over, and Jack was only maybe 8 years older than everybody on the team. He was a pretty young guy. So we played under Jack, and I played 3 years with Terry, and I think I played 1 year with Tony. And we went to the national tournament 4 years in a row. We had good players, not a lot of Canadians, but enough. And but we had good goaltending, good coaching, the home advantage at the rink at BU. And so then Tony came, and they won the national tournament. They won the national tournament, I think, 2 years before I got there, and then they won the year after I left. So I'm thinking maybe we were a jinx or something. But
as good as he was with the Bobcats, he was even better by the time he got to BU. He was part of that team that dominated the ECAC. The 4 years he was there, they were one of the best teams, one of the best college hockey teams in North America, and Rick was front and center.
All three of us were captains at BU, which we're pretty proud of, and I'm still the only three-time first-team All-American at BU, so that's nice. I wish my brother Terry, he had 40 goals one year and never made it, so it would have been nice to see him make an All-American. Terry was a goal scorer. He's a good player. Tony was a goal scorer. He probably had the best shot of all three of us. But my brother Terry went, and I'm sure he put the bug in their ear about me, and they come up and watch me play junior hockey. And
Rick was a special guy down there, and still revered. He's in their Sports Hall of Fame, and I hear guys tell me if they've gone down and they get a tour of the Hall of Fame and they bring up Rick's name. I mean, it's like he was there yesterday. They loved him down there, and with good reason. He was just a terrific teammate and a terrific hockey player.
Yeah, Tony was a good player, good junior player. Tony and Terry were both right-handed shots. I was left, and I played center, and Terry played the wing, and Tony played the wing. But But we were good in junior. I mean, we're pretty good players and put up some numbers. So yeah, it was nice. You know, I'm sure Belleville and our parents and everybody were pretty proud.
Naturally, a great legacy. And I'm sure the coaches and the scouts were saying, "Are there any more of you?"
I've been told all my life, you know, how small I was, and you got to grow and get bigger and stronger. But then I had, I think I had 80-some points my senior year at BU, and I was at that point. I think I was the all-time leading scorer, and then John Cullen come along and broke all our records. But so I went to see the Bruins. I had an interview with the Bruins after my senior year, and I went in to talk to Harry Senden, and he said, "Well, we'll give you $100 a game. You go down to Providence and see what you can do." But he never looked at me once the whole time I was in the meeting with him. He had the college scout with me, and he's looking the other way. And so I walked out there and said, "There's no way I'm going there." So Bobby Murray, my agent, who also was my assistant coach at BU, got a hold of Montreal, and they offered me a contract, a 2-year deal with a signing bonus. So I figured, hey, might as well start at the top and work your way down, because they were winning 4 Stanley Cups in a row when I went there. Well, I signed with them, and then it was funny, I was playing baseball in the South Hastings League, and there was the final game. We won the championship. I stepped on home plate, went over and congratulated all the boys, and then jumped in my car and had to go to training camp the next morning in Montreal. We got there, it was pretty relaxed. The Canadiens camp, they had just won the Stanley Cup, and I think they had just won the American League Championship that year before. So it was real relaxed. Guys were having fun. We'd have an hour scrimmage in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, go that whole week, and then they would break camp at the end of the week. So I remember one year we won the championship, they give you $800 and you go to the bar and drink. I learned so much with Montreal. I mean, guys from Dryden to Lafleur and Lemaire and Savard and Robinson and Guy Lapointe. And I mean, you couldn't help but learn just watching these guys. Then I got sent down to Halifax. We had to do the tour through Quebec. We stayed in St. Foy, Quebec, so we did all the exhibition games in Quebec and all the exhibition games in Nova Scotia and all the exhibition games in Maine. And I remember the first year in Halifax, we were playing a team, the Maine Mariners. They were the Philadelphia Farm Club, and they were like the 73 Flyers. They'd rather beat you up than play hockey and win the game. But anyway, they had a tough team, and I remember going in to play them first game, and I hit a kid in the corner. Come out of the corner, he's on my back, punching me in the back of the eyes. So this is pro hockey. We had a pretty good year, but Maine won the championship that year. They just fought their way to the championship again. But that American League was unbelievable. It was like the Wild West. Bench clearing brawls. I mean, it was crazy. And then there was fighting in the 80s, obviously, when I played, and a lot of tough guys. Anyway, they hired a guy, Tommy McCluskey, my first year in Halifax, and Trevor Burbick was a heavyweight champion, I think, in Canada. Tommy McCluskey was his trainer, so they hired him to teach us how to box, just so we could defend ourselves against teams like Maine. So we'd be in the ring for 3 minutes with a guy your own size, with the gloves on and helmet, and you'd be punching away. But he taught us a lot. He taught you to defend yourself, for sure. So I spent 2 more years in Halifax. I re-signed after my second year. Whether it was a mistake or not, I don't know. But anyway, I had 3 years in Halifax. Ended up playing 2 games with the Canadiens. I think one in Montreal, one in Chicago or something. But I remember going to Chicago for that one game, and Toe Blake standing beside me, and I'd never been to Chicago Stadium before. And you walk in, and the old stadium, you look up, and it's like 40 stories high. And Toe Blake looks at me, he says, "First game in here, kid?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "I remember my first game 40 years ago." I get called up, and I get to the rink, I'm dressed, and get my skates, and they've sharpened them. I loved skates that weren't that sharp, and I had a hard time with them. I kept rubbing them on the wood on the bench to just get them duller again. But my mother didn't like going the other way to Toronto. She liked going to Montreal because they kept mispronouncing my name in Toronto, and she didn't like that very much. So, plus she had Donnie Dolan, a couple other guys that had connections to tickets down there, and she was on the first row right in the corner, and she watched the games, and it was a big deal for sure. Some of them were brutal. Some of them got it right. They have pronunciation sheets there you get it right, but New York and Boston, I don't know if they mispronounced it or just the accent. And Toronto, there was like 3 teams that would always mispronounce it. So they were always an enemy of my mother's. Mike Eruzione has been my friend. I roomed with him for 3 years at BU, and we're still really good, close and friends. And I didn't play with him my first year. Then the second year, Jack Parker put us together. Mike played the power play a little bit. I never played the power play at BU. And then Jack broke us up our junior year. And then Mike's father, Jeep, complained so loud to Jack Parker, he put us back together again, and we ended up playing the last couple of years together. And it was funny because the first time I met Mike, he was on the ice, and you couldn't have coaches; you just scrimmage. So we're sitting on the bench, and this kid comes off the ice, and he takes his skate off, and he throws it in the garbage can. He freaking skates, and I looked in, they were called Red Ball or something. I said, what? I never heard of these things before. And I said, what's going on? He says, they told me to get me new skates if I come here, but I got to make the team first and this and that. So he made the team, they got him new skates, and the rest was history. And that day, we became pretty good friends. So I ended up going to Hartford. And I got there, it was another old team, and they had Ronnie Francis was there, but they had a lot of older guys, and we're not very, we weren't very good, but we're playing a pretty tough division with the Bruins and teams like that. So the year before I got there, they had just come over from the World Hockey. In '79, they had Gordy and Ricky Lee, and the fans were great. The city was great. I loved playing in Hartford. I got to Hartford my first year, and I spent 50 games in Binghamton the first year. Then I came up and played the final games, and then the next year I think I had 24 goals. I had a pretty good year. And then the next year, there's 4 games into the season, and I'm playing with Archie Henderson on one side and Mark Renault on the other side, and I'm going, something's wrong here. I'm not getting much ice time. And so 4 games into the year, I got traded to New Jersey. So we go to New Jersey, and it was kind of the same situation. They just moved from Colorado, just got into New Jersey. And as a player, I didn't know who Mario Lemieux was. I wasn't following junior hockey or anything like that. So anyway, we're coming down the last 10 games of the year, and we're in last place. Now, we finished last, we get Mario. And then we go and play Pittsburgh, who was fighting with us for last place. And we beat them in Pittsburgh a couple times, and we jump ahead of them. And it was all over the press about how we're out of the basement now. But yeah, down the road, you don't get Mario Lemieux. It's a big one, but they just lost better than we did. I got traded, I think in the summer of '85, I got traded to St. Louis. And when I got to St. Louis, Ron Caron said to me, he says, we've been trying to get you for 2 years. That was a nice feeling when I got that from Ron, that they were trying to get me. So I got to St. Louis, and I used to hate playing in St. Louis. It was a tough place to play. They had tough teams, and the rink was always foggy and hot and whatever. So I got to St. Toulouse, and I'm pretty excited about it because I know they make the playoffs every year. They had a good team. They had Brian Sutter and Bernie Fedorko and a bunch of guys that been around the league for a while. And then they had some young guys like Dougie Gilmour, Herbie Raglan and Dougie Evans and so Greg Millen, goaltender. So I was real excited about getting there. And I remember, when I first got there, the humidity in St. Louis is like hitting you right in the face with a paddle. It was just like, it was amazing how hot it is there, especially in the summertime. Those guys worked hard. They were a good team. I thought I fit in pretty good with them. And we sold out the building. It was an old building, but we sold it out. The fans were unbelievable in St. Louis. I loved playing there. And small dressing rooms. And matter of fact, we go on the road and they'd have a couple cats go after all the mice and rats in the building when we were on the road. But I love St. Louis. It was a great place to play. I had a front row seat with Hully that year. He scored 86 goals. Otzi he wouldn't even look. They'd know where each other were all the time. And you gave Brett a couple inches, he was going to score. It's amazing. Everybody knew where he was going. He's on the high slot or whatever, and everybody knew he was there, but he just shoot the puck so hard and so quick. But they were fun to watch. But we also had, Bernie Fedorko had 500-point seasons in St. Louis, and it was a fun place to play. But Hully, he was the man. He was the show. And he always told me, he says, I got a rest immunity in St. Louis, you know that. When I came to St. Louis, I played on a regular line, I think scored 18 goals or something there. But Dougie Gilmour was doing all that. Dougie was a defensive guy in St. Louis. And then they said, Dougie's got a lot of potential. Maybe this is not the right. So I kind of switched positions with Dougie. I kind of took over that defensive stuff, and he was more offense, got on the power play, and everybody knows how good Doug Gilmour was. It was a fun role. I mean, I chased Gretzky and Lemieux and Savard and Yzerman and all those guys all over the ice for a long time. And, I don't know who's the best. I mean, they all had their own, There's always been a debate between Gretzky and Lemieux. I don't know if Mario stayed healthy, he might have been the best player. I don't know, but they were hard to cover. I remember I was in Pittsburgh one night and I think he had 9 points or something that game, Lemieux. And after the second period, I said, somebody else can do this. I'm getting tired of it. He's 6'4", and as soon as he turned at center ice, he was gone. I mean, you'd have to, guys did jump on his back and try to stop him and still couldn't stop him. And Gretzky, Gretzky was Gretzky. I think him and Curry, when they come down on a 2-on-1, I'll bet you it's 99% success rate when they probably scored every time. I kind of thank them every day. Guys like Lemieux and Gretzky, they made my career, really, chasing them around. Oh, I took a lot of pride, and I knew, the coach didn't have to tell me to get out there. I knew that, the penalty, you're going, and you got out in the ice, but took a lot of pride in it. And you were mad when they scored, and pretty happy when they didn't score. But I remember years later, I got to know Mario Lemieux a little bit through Mike, and he complimented me on what it was like to playing against me, which was coming from the best. It's pretty nice, I did commercials in St. Louis, and I check for a living, and that's why you should check out, But so yeah, it helped me personally down the road for sure.
I check for a living, and I've been checking out the deals at your Midwest GMC dealers. These GMC Suburbans are legendary. Your Midwest GMC dealers, another reason why GMC Suburbans are #1. Check them out.
On the back of a hockey card that Upper Deck put out, maybe 90, 91, 91, 92, certain players, Gretzky and whatnot, were asked, what player do you least like playing against? And I think Dennis Savard said, Rick Meagher. He says, I just could never shake him. He was just always there. And we thought that was neat because that's a very important part of the game. And I remember when Bobby Hull used to talk about certain guys that played on the Canadiens that he couldn't shake, and it just drove him crazy, because these, not only would they sort of be his shadow, but they peck away at him too, and just get you off your game, and that's important in hockey. But of course, maybe I don't know whether Ricky would say it or not, but maybe a highlight in his career was when he won the Selke Trophy as the best defensive forward in the NHL. And sometimes when you look at the winners of the Selke Trophy, it sort of turns out that they also had big numbers as well. Lots of goals and lots of assists, and they just happened to be picked in that regard. But that wasn't the case with Rick. He was just a really good defensive player and knew his role and played it, and that's why he won that award. Anybody from our town, of course, was very proud of him because it was a real nice thing. There aren't very many guys in Belleville that have won individual trophies in the NHL.
Well, I was 38, I think, when I retired, and I tore my ACL in my knee. I had surgery. 6 months later, I came back and played and felt good, skated well. I really had no problems with it. And then the following year, I played, and I was 38 or 39 at the time. I said, it's enough. I went through that knee surgery. I didn't want to do it again, and goals were starting to be hard to come by at that stage of my career. It all started, I guess, early 80s. My buddy John Pepper and Chrissa, his wife, had a little girl, Nicole, and she was born with rheumatoid juvenile arthritis. So I remember I had a cottage back north in Tweed, and we'd go back to the cottage, and she would cry all the time. And then when you put her in the crib, she would lay on her elbows and her knees because the pain of the arthritis was so bad. So they would take her to the hospital and whatever. So a couple years later, maybe, we started a golf tournament. And Easter Seals did a lot for Nicole and the family. They bought her hot tub so she could, for the heat and stuff like that. So anyway, we decided to do a golf tournament. And no idea how to run a golf tournament or anything that goes with it. So we hired a committee, Jimmy Downer and Jamie Lytle and John Pepper and Randy McFry, all these guys. We had a great committee. My sister Janet was the president of the committee for a while. Jack Miller. So we all got together and got sponsors, and we got sent letters out to players. Because I was in St. Louis, it was easy for me. We had a big connection with Peterborough. We also had a pretty strong connection with Kingston. Dougie Gilmore was living down there at the time, and Kirk Muller and a bunch of guys. So yeah, we and René Robert and French Connection, they were a big part of it because they brought a lot of players with them too. So it got to the point where it was not easy, but it became a routine every year. We could get a lot of players in and a lot of local guys. Our local guys were terrific. Guys from Sterling, Robbie Ray, and Brad Richardson, and Sean Antosky and Steve Bancroft, all those local guys were terrific. I mean, they came every year, helped us out any way they could, brought players with them.
I worked at it in a few different areas. I'm not a golfer, I don't like golf, but it was great just to see the talent that came in because of Ricky, and then they'd all do their their golf, and then they'd go and have dinner and whatnot. Sometimes they came to the Belleville Club. When I was working there, the whole crew would, say, before the golf tournament, and it was kind of fun to see them all in action down there too.
I got on at the Intel in '91. So the tournament was right in its heyday, and I remember when the pros would start coming into town on a Friday night, there was always a hotel, and there was where they came to check in, and one of the banquet rooms was reserved, and they would come in and grab a beer and a sandwich, and the media could come in and it was just like Halloween candy, for a sports writer. All of a sudden you get, you had the guys from the French Connection like Rennie Robert and all these guys, like top NHLers, and by the end of the night, you never ended up talking to everybody that you wanted to. It was just terrific that way. And that was a real big deal for Belleville and a lot of fun.
The first year, I think we raised 12 or 13 or something like that, $1,000, and it was pretty neat, raise that much money the first year. Then it kind of took off, and we had some lulls, maybe 10th, 11th year. We started having a hard time trying to get some players in because all the other tournaments were paying these players big money to go there and play and whatever. So anyway, we brought these guys in, and they all come in, and they were all terrific. Bobby Hull was brutal. He'd sit there and sign autographs. Come on, Bobby, we got to start this tournament. And he wouldn't leave until he signed every autograph for every kid in the neighborhood. So, but yeah, and then they bring a lot of the kids out, and they have a tent, and all the guys get their pictures taken with them, go over, shake hands with the kids. So it was pretty neat. And I remember, Eric Lindros. He came a couple years, and he was like a giant on the fairway, and all the kids would be running around him. But yeah, if they had time or if they didn't have another previous commitment, they would come down and play in it for sure.
He just wasn't going to lend his name and show up. He always made sure there was a good committee in place, and anything that people needed from him, he was there for it in his own quiet way. Because Rick's a real humble guy. That was a really marvelous thing that he did. Get that tournament underway. Unbelievable. Almost $3 million in 30 years. That's nuts. And still, visible today in this community. I think it was more than 12 different charities and community organizations that have benefited over the years, and they created a scholarship, and it's mind-blowing. It really is. And it's a real salute to Rick in terms of giving back to the community that he grew up in.
It is satisfying. The pirate ship that we did, then we went down to Swix Island, we did the Tom Gavey Pavilion and the play park beside it, but I give the city of Belleville and all the sponsors because they've kept them up, and they're still in good shape, and they redid the park at Swix Island a few years ago. So I give the city of Belleville a lot of credit. I mean, they've been great. I'm proud of it, for sure. We raised a lot of money for a good cause. I like Belleville. I mean, that's the reason I'm still here. I mean, I like the city. I like my friends are still here. Do a lot together, play a lot of golf with a lot of my buddies. And so, yeah, I just really like the city. Mike Keenan offered me the job if I wanted to do some pro scouting. I said, sure. So that's how I got into that. And I did that for about close to 10 years, I guess, pro scouting. And I liked it. It was nice. Went to all the nice cities. Got too cold in Montreal. You went to Florida or someplace. And, serve you a nice hot meal in the press room. You go upstairs, you watch all the replays on the TV up there. So it was a nice gig. I think after about 9 or 10 years, our chief scout of the amateur went to Columbus and opened up a spot in Ontario. So Larry Plow asked me, want to go back to Ontario and do amateur scouting. So I took him up on it. So I was in charge of the Ontario Hockey League, and then you'd go to the Western League and Quebec League and U.S. colleges and stuff. So I just liked doing it. It was a lot of fun, and all the scouts and other teams were great. My own scouts were fun. It was good staff. We were pretty successful in a lot of picks we had. I packed it in 2012 and never went back and retired, and that was the end of it. The amateur stuff gives you a chance to go to the Czech Republic and Finland and Sweden and all those places, Germany. And so I got to see the world by amateur scouting. I thought I'd be working on the railroad like my dad and my uncles did for years. But yeah, it's, you know, it's amazing. It was a long journey, but yeah, it was fun.